y'all. My name is Nicole Cagna, and I am the host of DominionTV's Ask the Prophet, where we actually answer the hard questions. When the Lord designed this show, He wanted it to be a safe place where His church and His bride could ask the hard questions without judgment. And the last couple of years, we have obliged. Watch us live every Wednesday at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on Dominion TV. And don't forget to download the app and become a partner. You will never regret sewing. Welcome, everybody. I am Nicole Cagna, and I am so happy to be with you guys today. What a journey this morning trying to get here. We ended up having some major internet issues last night, and it carried over into this morning. And so I have been spending quite a bit of time praying, going, sweet Jesus, I can't today. Okay. And so the Lord showed up. Thank you, God. And we are here. My goodness, I can't even tell you the battle that it was. And I tell you, even last night while the internet was going out, my live stream was still on in my Wonder Women Leadership Academy. So if you see some perspiration on this brow, this is the back end of ministry that nobody tells you about. You guys get to see this, but there is a whole lot of work that goes into this. And the reason why I'm sharing that is because I always believe that it's important to honor the people that make something happen. And as myself, just trying to work on things with just Holy Spirit and it takes a lot. And so that's why I wanted to share this, because it's the same with this multimedia station here with Dominion TV. It takes a lot of energy. It takes a lot of funding to run something like this. And so I just wanted to share that with you, because if you are going to sow into good soil, you probably will want to sow into this television station that makes this possible, that gives you 24/7 live stream, that gives you Christ-centered content from many different streams, many different types of preachers, teachers, apostles, prophets, bishops from everywhere. So I just wanted to share that, because I know just from my end how difficult it is. And I can imagine what it would be like streaming to all of these countries and nations. And meanwhile, my spectrum's acting up over here. So I get it. And so I just wanted to share that with you, because if it's difficult for one person, imagine what it is for an entire television station and media hub to be able to do this. So I wanted to just take a second to honor Dominion Television and to say that we appreciate how much you work. We appreciate and we see how much you work and how hard you work to get the message out to people that otherwise would never get to see it. And so I think that's important. And I wanted to honor Dominion TV. And if you want to sow a seed, please do that. Okay. Now, let's get into what we came. This is Valentine's week. Now, I know I'm probably like, I would appear to be the least romantic female on the face of the earth, because I never liked Valentine's Day. In fact, when my husband and I first got married, I told him, don't even worry about it. Like, I have zero interest in celebrating a commercial holiday. I have an interest in celebrating love every day. And I believe that when we just kind of set apart one day, and I know that this is probably way too deep for many of you, because you're like, why are you overthinking it? But I've counseled enough couples to know, my husband and I have counseled enough couples, and I have spoken to enough people to know that a lot of times it's like, oh, I'll just wait for this once a year to feel loved on. And I just don't believe that that should be the case. I believe that love is supposed to be every day. I believe that we're supposed to be showing each other love and having a healthy marriage. I truly believe that every day should feel like Valentine's Day, because it's a day where it would seem It's a day where it would seem that everybody's on their best behavior and both partners are intentional and romantic. And I think that sometimes that message that gets sent is that's the only day for that. And I don't believe that it is. I believe that we need to have a healthy marriage year round. And so the question that we're answering today, and this is a 2 to 3 part series, as I mentioned to you in the beginning, because the Lord, the Holy Spirit gave me these points when I saw this question. And I looked back, I've been married nearly 20 years. And the reason why I believe, and I say this because sometimes people are like, that they think that you can't have wisdom unless you've been married 50 years. But I have seen people married 50 years that are repeating year one 50 times. So I want you to understand that it's not about the longevity of a marriage, because you can have length, but not quality. The importance in a relationship is the intention. And I could tell you that as a minister, I have seen people fall apart and their marriages fall apart when they have lost a child. I have seen marriages fall apart due to financial difficulty and bankruptcy and things like this. I have seen marriages fall apart because one party becomes chronically ill. And I can tell you that my husband and I, Christopher and I, we have gone through all three things in, my goodness, probably I would say at 10 years of marriage, we had all of that. We had experienced the loss of my daughter in 2012, and we were married in 2006. So we were married for 6 years when we experienced child loss. Then we experienced chronic illness beforehand, where I received a diagnosis and I was hospitalized and on my deathbed about 5 times. The Lord brought me back. So I'm just telling you that there's a lot of things that he and I have walked through, that the Lord has counseled us through. And I could tell you something else too, that we had also experienced a devastating financial loss when I became too sick and I had to stop teaching. And so the Lord has restored a lot, and I'm appreciative of that. But I can tell you that if you don't have a solid foundation, you are not going to be able to navigate these things well. And the thing that differentiated us from I think a lot of other couples is that we approached it like it's not you versus me, it's us versus the problem. And when you're a warrior, and you're a natural warrior like I am and my husband is, we immediately go into back to back stance. If you've ever seen, like the movie 300, or if you've ever seen, I'm one of those ones. I don't like romantic comedies. I like action movies. I like things that make you think. I like, I'm just that girl. My husband was like, whoa, like that's awesome. Like we always agreed on movies versus we started dating, because he'd be like, do you want to see this? I'm like, you know, I don't like it. So, I think that both of us kind of had that mentality of, when Deborah meets Gideon, right? It's like, the judges of the Bible, like, we're back to back and we have our swords and we're ready to go. We're like, let's do this. So I think that when you look at marriages and you look at it from the perspective of communication and expectation and what that looks like, the actual examples, and what we went over briefly not yesterday, but I should say last week or last time, was that we have to understand the foundation of all communication is love. That means it's not accusation. Now, the reason why I say this is because when Chris and I first got married, year one, we're both like lawyers. We're both intelligent people, and I'm logical. I am definitely, I would say that when I took my little left and right brain test, I showed up equal. I showed up literally equal. I'm a divergent. It's a strange thing, but I can go into both. And I think that it's important because I remember when he and I used to disagree when we were first married. And I want to start with this premise for those that are confused. We have a marriage that is equal. Okay. There's no like tiebreaker, complementarian nonsense theology. And I say that with complete confidence. So we are equals. We lead together. We do life together. So it's natural that when we argued, there was no like, oh, well, because he's the husband, he's right. that we don't know. That's not God. That is just bias. We don't practice that in our relationship. So when we would disagree like lawyers. So he would make his points, I would make my point, and whoever argued better was seemingly won. But all that did was create a sense of frustration. All that did was create a sense of dissatisfaction. And I remember he and I both praying, and I'm like, Lord, what's up? And the Lord's like, you guys are fighting like you're lawyers. You're not fighting like you're married. And it hit me like, oh, okay. So this is the part of the two becoming one. We have to learn how to communicate. And what does that look like? What does healthy communication look like? And I remember for me, I am very direct and I am compassionate, but I'm direct. Like I don't do the like, what's wrong, honey? I'm fine. Nothing, nothing. I don't do that. And the reason why is because I'm the only girl in an all boy Italian family. And so and also I come from a lineage of very direct women because they're prophets. And so prophets are very direct. We just say it like it is. We don't have a problem with saying it like it is. And so, but I realized that there's a difference between being a prophet and then also speaking the language of love, meaning I couldn't respond in the way that I normally would, because now I'm dealing with my partner's heart. Okay, we have an intimacy, we have a different connection than when I'm acting in my office. And that was something that you have to learn. And similarly with him, he said to me, he's like, I had to learn, he's like, that just because my pride was hurt doesn't mean that you were wrong. And that was, I love that humility in him, because he says, I've grown. He's like, when I was younger, I'd get insulted all the time. He's like, and if that was something that was allowed to stand, he's like, we wouldn't be close. He's like, if you didn't call me out on that, he's like, we wouldn't be where we were. If you just said, okay, I acquiesce because you're the husband, he's like, our relationship would be horrible. He's like, so I'm grateful that you called me out on stuff. And I said to him, and I'm grateful that you called me out on stuff, because that's what healthy marriage looks like. And I think sometimes with communication, we tend to feel like if we say something and somebody doesn't like it, that just because you don't like what somebody's saying doesn't mean they're wrong. And sometimes we mistake conviction, right? Like we're convicted and we get insulted. So sometimes we mistake it, right? Offense and conviction. So we're offended, but that's not really what it is. It's that we're convicted, and conviction is uncomfortable and we don't like it. And so it's not necessarily what the person is saying. It's the fact that they're right. And you don't want that, because you feel called out, and that's a normal feeling. So once you get past your flesh, that's when real communication begins. And we began to talk about how we are supposed to process those feelings. Don't respond immediately. Go to the Lord and say, what am I feeling? Why am I feeling this way? Pardon me. How am I feeling? And is it a trigger? Is this something? Because typically the blanket emotion in any disagreement is going to be anger. Okay. And that's why you can't respond immediately, because you have to leave space for that. You don't want your communication to reflect your blanket emotion. And anger is what we call a blanket emotion, because underneath it, it's really hurt, or feeling rejected or misunderstood. And so if you grew up with a spirit of rejection, when somebody disagrees with you, that could feel like rejection, and you can get insulted. And then you're reacting, and you're giving them a message that says you're not safe to share anything with me. That's what that says. That says you're not safe. And what kind of environment are you setting if your husband or your wife can't go to you and say, when you do A, I feel B? And if your ego can't handle that, then you're not ready for a relationship and you need therapy. Like, I'm not being mean. I'm saying if you cannot handle somebody telling you that you hurt them, then you probably need to get therapy to examine the reason why. Maybe your feelings weren't safe or validated when you were younger. So as a result, you need that constant validation, even if you're wrong. And I'm telling you, I can't explain how many marriages have fallen apart or have one person dying in that marriage on the altar of unhealed trauma. And I'm sorry, but your partner did not sign up to be in a covenant with your trauma. They signed up to be in a covenant with you. And it is your responsibility to deal with your own trauma and not bleed all over your spouse. That's me giving it to you straight. That's the truth. And people will tiptoe around it and say, oh, well, we have to forgive. Yeah, I get it. You have to forgive. But there is zero relational currency when you cannot share your feelings, or if when you go to do so, you feel like you have to tiptoe around somebody's ego. If your ego is bigger than the love for your spouse, then you need to kill your flesh a little bit more. Because if you don't know how to say you're sorry, if you don't know how to apologize, if your apology is, all right, I'm sorry, okay, fine. That's not, I'm sorry. That lacks safety. And you cannot do that. So you need to get healed. Okay. You are not responsible for your partner's ego. If they cannot handle the truth, that's on them. And I say that because a lot of times in marriages where we set up one spouse to be the king, unfortunately, only one spouse is having a good marriage and they think their marriage is good. And meanwhile, their wife is dying inside. She's a shell of who she was. So kill your flesh. Okay. Wives, don't play games. Don't do that. I'm glad that I grew up with very straight up women, and my father and my mother are very direct. And I just grew up like not knowing any other way to communicate. So imagine my surprise when I enter into female land and what is said is not what is meant. I don't get that. I still don't. And I don't deal with it and I don't tolerate it either. Mean what you say what you mean, plus nothing. There is no other way. I don't believe in the, well, you know what I mean. No, I don't. I know what you said. I don't know what you mean. How about you explain what you mean, or at least think before you speak? I know that sounds harsh, but that's the reality. Unfortunately, we live in a culture that has a lot of hidden messages, and I don't play that. And I don't play that game. And so if I have something to say, I'm going to say it. And if it has to do with my spouse, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to say it in love, meaning I'm going to sit down and say, hey, when this happens, I feel this. You see, when this occurs, it makes me feel this. And then, you have a partner who hears and says, so what I hear you saying is, and you say yes. And then they'll say, I'm so sorry. That was not my intent, but I take responsibility for my actions, because even though it wasn't my intent, my actions has a language. Behavior, guys, is a language. So there's what you say, and then there's your behavior, and your behavior speaks louder. Your behavior is a language. All behavior is a language, which is why discerners who see in the spirit, hello, why I can see a snake in the room before a lot of other people is because of that. It's because not only am I seeing in the spirit, I'm listening to what they say. And when I see a show, I call it a show. When I see a prophetic show, I'm like, you're not real. You're just a lot of charisma with zero real. And I'll sit. Mhm, mhm, and in my head, I'm like, "Nope, nope, not even close." And it has nothing to do with being able to receive. It has to do with discernment, looking at the actions, looking at the look at me. Mm-mm, nope, not happening. And so a lot of times we have to, when you are a discerner and you see the snake in the room, you don't jump up and scream and you don't communicate, it's the snake in the room. There's a way, which is why I tell you to ask the Lord how to respond, because each person is different. Each strategy, each situation is different. Okay. Then we talked about expectations. Expectations meaning if my, spouse is sick, like I am an acts of service. Like I love doing something for somebody. So for me, quality time, acts of service, that's me. So if my husband's sick, the first thing I want to do is make him chicken soup. I want to like, make little pain rub. I have pain rub that I make homemade and all that stuff. And he's the guy that literally will put on his robe, put on a bunch of layers and his leather jacket and sweat it out and then be fine the next night. And he doesn't want any of that fanfare. And I remember when we were first married, I was like trying to push, like, let me make you chicken soup. Let me love you. And I remember I was like, let me love you. I was like, let me take care of you. And then I realized, no, like he just wants to be left alone to sweat it out. And all I would do is once in a while just come in and get him water. And I think for me, it was because I wanted to love him my way, but he wanted to heal his way, and that is his right to do so. So I had to learn. At first, I thought it was because he didn't want to be a burden. So I thought, because we love each other. Chris and I, we just do. Like if we disagree, a lot of times it's mostly about like where he's like, no, I'll do that for you. And I'm like, no, babe, you don't have to. And he's like, no, I will. And people are like, but I'm like, listen, that's what happens when you pray for, for the proper spouse and you wait for that spouse and they wait for you, and you don't do missionary dating where you trying to get somebody saved and they're not saved. And then you marry them and then you find out real quick how saved they are in their behavior. No, you got to look at that fruit. You got to look, two things you need to look at before you say I do: fruit and flags. Okay. Fruit and red flags. And let me tell you, they go hand in hand. Okay. Green flags only, please. All right. We need to see a nice fruit tree before you say I do. And so this is where the other aspect of things come in is we talked about what it looks like. So understanding that I had been on dates with guys that were not for me. Okay. They were Christian men, but they really kind of weren't. They were more religious spirit kind of dudes. And I'm like, going on a date with one of them, like it was felt like a job interview. It was like, I'm sitting there trying to get to know their field and have an intellectual conversation, and they're trying to tell me how many children they want me to bear. And I'm just like, I think you need to go home. Because that ain't me, babe. Like, you got to go. And so one of the things that Chris and I did when we first, started, when we first met and all that, is we were engaged after 6 weeks because God showed up so big and was like, this is it. But the first thing he did when we met in the hospital was, just he cleaned my house. I was like, what's this dude's angle? And God's like, I sent you somebody selfless, and now you asking what his angle is. And I'm like, you're right. I'm sorry, Jesus. But after dealing with what I had gone through, and I just stopped dating for a year, and I told the Lord, that man better knock on the door, because they ain't happening over here. Because I'm not, I remember some guy telling me, well, you're not going to need your master's degree because I'm a doctor. And, and I just was like, I laughed. He turned red, but I laughed, and I was like, my call is not a conference call. So you don't get to decide what I do and what I don't do. That's not how this works. I listen to my Father, and this is a partnership. This is not a dictatorship, and I'm not interested in a dictatorship. And the Lord knew that. And so one of the things that we discussed under expectations was household tasks. And he just happened to be, because I grew up with a father who was not that way. He was the guy that would like pick up the vacuum cleaner. He was he was doing the dishes if my mom was cooking. I saw partnership. I never saw that. So it was surprising to me having, a dad and a mom who partnered and preached together and like led together and did life together. I never saw that. I saw some really good theology in my house. Like there was some theological discussions. There was pastors all the time at our table. Like it was like a seminary. It might have been like the stuff I learned a lot by the time I was 5. I probably could have preached based on both of them, and listening to their conversations and listening to who they had over. And there was like ministry, ministry, ministry. So you grow up in that and you see partnership, and that's what you expect. So imagine my surprise when it wasn't like that, out in, I don't even know what kind of, I guess that would be a complementarian theology, when there was like a fake theology out there that really didn't represent what I grew up with and what the real Pentecostal church was founded in, that had a lot female ministers and things like this. And it was not even an issue, not even a question. And so I just was shocked that this other type existed because I wasn't exposed to it growing up. And so I remember feeling like, you know what, because of some of the things that I've dated, I remember talking to my husband, future husband, and saying, what are your thoughts on children? What are your thoughts on, and he's like, I believe every decision has to be made together. There is no, like, there is no power play. There's just, and I felt very confident in that, and that was great. And I told him my heart too, and he shared his. And and when you have that, that's how that works. When you have real love, you're not trying to outdo each other. It's not a power struggle. Marriage is a gift. And so you have to discuss your expectations at the beginning. And if you're like, wow, we didn't do that, but I'm seeing in our marriage where we need to now, then start. Then start, because compromise is necessary. Now, here's the other part. You can't have expectations that you failed to communicate and then blame your spouse. That drives me crazy. I used to tell women this in particular, because they would like expect their spouse to read their mind. I'm like, you can't do that to that guy. He is not going to read your mind. Like, it's ridiculous. You have to verbalize. He's not psychic. So don't play games with him. I don't like games. And I don't like when women in marriages will play games with their spouse. And it's like there's this invisible goalpost that sometimes wives will keep moving because they're insecure in their relationship, because they're not getting what they need. So rather than explaining that, they keep moving the goalpost, and he doesn't know whether he's coming or going. And that's not fair to him. You cannot do that. You must have wisdom. You have to speak to your husband, and you have to be direct and speak in love. You can't make him guess and then blame him when he gets it wrong. That's not fair. And I don't like that. That, to me, that's playing games. And I am a very big advocate for removing every piece of manipulation. That's witchcraft, and I don't like it. I don't like it. And I have insulted sometimes in counseling where women were like taken back because they really thought I was going to be on their side because of our gender. And I'm like, hey, listen, my sword goes both ways, honey. If you're going to manipulate him, I'm going to call you out. Like, that is it. You cannot do that and then think that, that he's supposed to jump through every hoop. I don't like it. We don't do that here. That's not how that works. That's witchcraft, and that's manipulation. You're not going to do it. So don't have those expectations. If your expectations are in your head, that won't work. So don't have expectations up here that don't make it here. I remember I was reaching a point where I was in burnout because I was going through, and still am going through, hormonal changes. You get, you're in your late 40s. My birthday's actually Sunday. I'm going to be 47. So I was going through, couple of years back, I started my menopause journey, my perimenopause journey. And I think that's important when a woman especially goes through hormonal shifts. And considering that I have a diagnosis of Addison's that deals with hormones, my health, I was in the hospital. It was bad. And I remember sitting with the Lord, and the Lord said, what would bring you peace right now? Because the same things that brought you peace last season, now that you're going through a health thing, it's not bringing you peace anymore. And you have to honor your body in a different way, honey, because you're going through a change, and there's ways to help you through it. There's bioidentical hormones, and we're going to find a way to get you through it. But right now, in the now, your world feels like it's on fire. What would bring you peace? And so I said, well, one thing would be knowing the plan for dinner during the week and who's going to take on what. So I then took that, and Chris and I chatted about, with his new position, our nights are going to look different. So now that he's assistant principal, he gets out later. So we chatted about how to mitigate the mental load. So it wouldn't fall on just me, or it wouldn't fall on him, or we wouldn't be like, when he's getting home at 6 o'clock at night, it wouldn't be like, well, what are we doing for dinner while I'm helping my son with his work, his homework, school, appointments after school, clubs, sports, you name it. What is that going to look like when we're both away from the house? And so we chatted about the mental load. We chatted about discussing, and we discussed and figured out our week together. And so that meant that he was like, okay, I'm going to cook this on this day. And I said, all right. And then I'll take this on this day. And he's like, all right. And then I'll go grocery shopping and get the ingredients. And I said, all right. And I'll do some meal prep. And this is what we did. And we planned out the meals for the week on a Sunday. We plan it out so we know what we're doing. But what I didn't do is charge my husband foolishly. I didn't say, you know what, you have this new thing and now I'm stuck with everything. No, I was like, wow, okay, I'm going through this, this whole middle school, which is a big shift from elementary with my son, and there's a lot more involved there. Now you have a new position and I'm doing things here. And so what does this look like for us? And that's called communication of what does it look like? Not being angry at your spouse for something that you didn't tell them. You can't do that. You have to work on it. Okay. And let's talk about sex. I know, my goodness. Oh no, right? But I think this is important. This is a loaded topic. And I'm going to use this scenario that I hear most often in marital discussions that my husband and I have had with couples. And this is what we hear. Quote, because it's the same story. My husband always wants to have intimacy. This is what they will say, but I'm touched out from my toddler. I have nothing for myself. So this is where you need to share, ladies, where you are in that season. And you need to be vocal about taking time for you, because no one's coming to rescue you. Okay. Your husband is a father. He's a parent. He's not a babysitter. Okay. He is a full grown adult and he is capable. You can trust him. Okay. You didn't marry a child. You married a man. At least I hope so. And so that's why a woman who takes time for herself will be happier and healthier. So you need to be vocal about your needs. Now, I happen to be married to a guy that used to push me to take time for myself. And the reason why is because being, again, an acts of service love language, the more I love, when I love you, I want to just do something for you. I want to do everything for you because I love you. That is my personality. And that service comes easy to me. It's not hard. I'm not resentful of it. And knowing that I could overdo, I just have that tendency to overdo. And my husband would take my face in his hands and he'd be like, I love you so much. You do so much for us. Now go somewhere, go for a walk, go for a run, go to the gym, go shopping, go whatever you want to do, go upstairs for an hour and disappear. And we will pretend that you don't exist because you need time. And he's the one that helped me realize that I needed time, because I didn't know why I was so frustrated. It didn't hit me because I was on autopilot. And he was the one who said it. Now, I know that not every woman has a husband like that. I get that, which is why you have to be vocal. And so you can't charge your spouse foolishly. Again, you have to be vocal about your needs. Okay. Men, this is where you need to show you're competent in a marriage. There is zero reason why you shouldn't know or wouldn't know your child's favorite show. There is zero reason for you not to know their teachers' names. There is zero reason why you are not on a parent contact form. There is zero reason why you wouldn't know how to cut the crust off their sandwiches or how to make mac and cheese with directions on a box. You are a fully grown, capable individual. You can do this. There is zero reason. If you don't know, gentlemen, how your household runs, then you are an uninvolved participant. And then your wife is the default parent, which means this puts you at a level of a child needing instruction. Not hot. Not hot at all. So please be sure, if you're looking for intimacy, and again, this isn't like oh, I did the dishes, so now I get intimacy. This is not transactional. See, transactional happens with prostitutes, not your wife. Okay? Your wife is holy. Your wife is a gift. That's called cherishing and being involved. So there's not a reward for doing the bare minimum. And I have to say this. I have to say this because the joke in the charismatic Christian community is, oh, well, he did the dishes, wink, wink, wink. And I'm just like, Chris and I look at that and we kind of are like, we roll our eyes because I'm like, that's just called being an adult. Like, that's not, if you have somebody living on their own. When I lived by myself, I did the dishes. When my husband lived on his own, because he's a man, he lived by himself. He didn't go from his mommy's house all the way to, he actually lived on his own, had a job in the city, did his own dishes, did his laundry, dressed himself, cooked his dinner, because that's what he did. None of that changes when you get married. Both parties now are sharing, so the load should be easier. But sometimes what happens, and it happens sometimes unintentionally, is that one party, or the party that stays at home, is somehow expected to be working 24/7. Whereas the partner that works outside of the home will get home at 5 or 6 o'clock and then sit down and relax. And meanwhile, the partner who's been home, who's been up since 4 a.m. and every 2 hours feeding the baby, doing this, is so exhausted, has zero, completely empty. And then you're doing nothing. You're sitting on that couch. You're relaxing after a long day. She's doing the dishes. She's doing the dinner. She's doing all the things, the baby, the bath. And then she finally sits down at night and you're looking at her, pulling at her for intimacy. I want you to understand that you then become another job. You become a task. And you don't want to become a task. You see, you want to become your wife's lover. And if you want to be a lover, then you need to be a competent adult, because women don't want to sleep with children. And I'm saying this because nobody talks about it, and unless it's in the worldly culture talks about it, but they talk about it in a way that makes it like men are yucky, and they're not. Men are amazing. I grew up around them all. I loved them. In fact, I had male friends and preferred them. I preferred working with men in my field. I have a master's degree in policy. I liked working with men better. I'm not against men. I think they're amazing. What I am against is when men shoot themselves in the foot, and I'm like, bro, you could be having such an amazing relationship with your wife if you caught on to this, because sometimes somebody just needs to be told. Maybe they grew up in a way where they didn't learn that. They grew up and they watched their mom do everything. And I've seen this. And they're like, well, my mom did everything for my father and my mom took care of everything. And that's the kind of wife I want. And I'm like, well, then you don't want a wife, you want a mommy. And if you want a mommy, then that's a problem, because a woman is not going to want to be intimate with a child. She's going to want to be intimate with her man. Let me tell you something, okay? As somebody who has been married for as long as I have been married, when my son was 2-3 years old, it was tough. He was going through the terrible twos. He was diagnosed with autism. I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia and Addison's disease. And he was like very big for his age. He was in like 5T6, size 6 boys when he was 3. So I'm over here trying to wrestle him into the car seat. and he would, and I just finally was like, I have to order groceries because my body hurt so bad. He was a flight risk. He would run in the parking lot, and I was just so ill, and I just felt so sick all the time. My husband would come home. The first thing he would do, he would walk in looking good, by the way, in his suit, and he would roll up his sleeves and he'd be like, let's do this. What do we got? What's going on, baby? I'm here. That's what he'd say. I'm here now. Oh, I could still remember how that felt when you're in chronic pain, or when you're frustrated and you've had a day and your hair is sticking up on end, you have no makeup on and rings under your eyes, and you see your husband walking in a suit, smelling good, rolling up his sleeves with them forearms showing, and he's like, I'm here now. I'm like, hallelujah. The Calvary's arrived. Nothing looked as good as that man. Let me tell you. And here's the thing. There was zero expectation attached to that. It was like, to me at that time, Superman walked in that door, and I'm like, yeah, there he is. Like, there he is, my man. And I just would hug him, and we would stay like that for a full minute. Even if Christian was like, well, all over the place, we would, like, the world stopped in that hug. I felt seen in that hug. I felt loved in that hug. And I said, how was your day? And I kissed that man straight up on his mouth, no matter how ugly I felt, with after having twins, not feeling like myself, struggling with chronic illness. I still kissed that man and held that man and loved on him, and he loved on me. And we were like, my partner has arrived. That's what it felt like. Not another child has arrived, not someone to clean up after. No, my man has arrived. Let this something, oh, that hits different. Guys, don't shoot yourself in the foot, because I am telling you, listen to me. If you show up like you just show up in yourself, you show up and you're like, I'm here. I got this. Not, what are we doing? What needs to be done? Like, you don't need like, just go do, like, all right. He'd be like this. Well, what do we got? And I felt like, all right, we're in the foxhole together of parenthood. It's sexy. Okay. So if you want a marriage to be healthy, men, listen to that. Now, ladies, I'm coming for you too. Okay. Because it ain't just one way here. Okay. I'm coming for both of you. Okay. Because this is important. A lot of things, that the reason why I think women are frustrated, because let's say their husband's wonderful. Let's say their husband's amazing. He comes home, he does what and you think he's attractive. To you, he looks like a piece of chocolate cake, but you wonder why he looks like he's chocolate cake, but you're not hungry. And you're wondering, why am I not hungry when he looks that good? Sometimes after giving birth, and a lot of women don't realize this. I know that they say 6 weeks. I can tell you, after nearly death, pneumonia, C-section, it's not 6 weeks. So leave that alone, gentlemen. After your wife is postpartum, let her initiate. I always say that because I remember counseling couples, again, where the husband, oh God, help them. It was like, well, it's been 6 weeks. And I'm like, and she birthed a human. Like, use your head. Okay. Have a heart, man. Like, it's not about you and your needs. Okay. In that moment, you need to be attentive. And when she's ready, trust me, an attentive man, the minute she gets energy, she will give you that energy. I promise you that. But sometimes, other than that aspect, it's sexual dysfunction. So now listen, if you are in a perimenopause state, or after childbirth and all of these things, and you are finding the mood is gone, or it went and died and it needs to be resurrected like Lazarus, you need to get your hormones checked, because a lot of women in the medical community are gaslit. A lot of women have wonky hormones and they don't know why. It takes, by the way, up to 2 years after pregnancy for your body to regulate. And then usually by that time you're pregnant again. And so there's a lot of hormones. When you go through perimenopause, I want you to pay attention to when women get divorced. It's when they're in their 40s and 50s, unless there's an extenuating circumstance. Why? It's because estrogen begins to drop, and estrogen is a nurturing hormone. And so when that drops, you're going to start seeing women go, listen, I'm done with y'all. I'm not anybody's slave. I'm not anybody's maid. Y'all figure it out. You're going to start finding the tolerance gets lower. And the reason why is because the hormones are wonky. And I'm pay attention. I'm not saying anytime a woman has an issue, it's her hormones. I'm saying sexual dysfunction is because half the time we're walking around with zero testosterone. We're walking around with zero progesterone, and we're not taken seriously. So that's why. So get that checked by not your gynecologist, a hormone specialist. Just like as men age, a lot of times there's erectile dysfunction, and that can occur in men if they're in their 60s and 70s. Sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes they will struggle because of the drop in testosterone. They will get erectile dysfunction. And so that occurs to their lack of sleep. They may have low testosterone levels, which, by the way, in men, that affects their adrenal function. So for men, their testosterone is created in their testes. And so if there is a testosterone dysfunction and an erectile dysfunction, you're also going to find that there is an adrenal dysfunction in men. And there is medical help for men too who struggle with that. But there's little help for women in this area. There's much help for men in that area, and there is little help for women in that area, but both occur as we age. So in men, they will say, okay, I'm going to supplement you with testosterone. They'll say to a male, we're going to do that. The man is going to be feeling really good and really feisty, but then he's going to go home to his menopausal or perimenopausal wife who's looking for the mood and can't find it. And that's because she'll be told, oh, your hormones are fine. I was always told my hormones were fine. I was wondering why when I hit 46, I felt hot flashes. I felt sick. I felt like I was pregnant. I didn't feel right. And to find out, I had zero hormone levels, to the point where the doctor was like, I don't know how you got up every day. Like, I don't even know how you got up. It's a miracle that you're standing. And so once I began to normalize and regulate hormone bioidentical, the healthy kind, I felt like myself again. And of course, all was restored. But my point is that a lot of times we treat one part of the couple and we forget to treat the other part. And then it looks like rejection. And it's hard for a guy to be chronically rejected in the bedroom. Let's just be honest. It's challenging. And so unless there's a sickness or an emotional, a lack of emotional connection, there's really no reason, especially when you're both attracted to each other, that you wouldn't want to, because it's equally satisfying for both parties. But you have to make sure that you're checking your physical health. So that way you're not thinking about only your needs and that your wife isn't attracted to you anymore. And so since the 1960s, they're literally, just because something is normal, by the way, doesn't mean it should be treated. So we have bioidentical hormones for men, and then we are, as women, a lot of times denied those same hormones because they say, well, menopause is normal. Well, so is erectile dysfunction as men age. So are chronic infections. So are migraines, arthritis, pain, all sorts of stuff happens according to the medical community. I don't buy into that, but according to the medical community, there's a lot of things that happen as we age, and yet there are solutions to all of them except for us. Why is that? It's because since the 1960s, there has been no studies in menopause in this area, and doctors will tell women that they have to suffer for 10 to 15 years. And I want, and the reason why you're probably like, well, what does this have to do with marriage? Because people will come to us in marriage counseling and the husband's like, I don't understand. She's not interested at all. She's just not interested at all. And she's like, I don't know why. And she's frustrated. And so it's like, we could fix this actually very easily. But if you don't know why you feel that way, you're going to just struggle. And so these are the years that couples divorce. And the Lord showed me, and I made that connection. I said, Lord, you need to tell me that there's a solution to this. And he's like, yes, yes. And so that's why I say, gentlemen, love your wife through these hard times, because your body sacrificed to bear family. And now she needs support. So don't abandon her as she navigates her new body. Don't abandon her as she navigates the fact that her womb is shutting down. It's shutting down, and there's all sorts of emotions that go along with that. So women, be tender towards your husband. You know what? When he comes home, give that man a big old kiss. If you know, how do I word this? Desire him and let him know that you desire him. Okay? You know, when you go, bend over to get something and he gives you that little tap, you could do the same thing right back. Like, show him that you're attracted to him. Affirm him. Tell him that you love him. Tell him how amazing he is. Tell your husband you are wonderful. I tell my husband all the time, you are handsome. I tell him, I just love the way that you lead at work. And I just love the way that you communicate. I love your heart towards our son. I love the way you love me. I love you. I think you're amazing. You know, if he tells me something that's going on at work, I'm like, babe, you got this. Like, we pray over each other. We pull arrows out of each other. I tell him how good looking he is, how attracted I am to him. I tell him that I love his heart. I make sure that I'm a safe place for his feelings. Ladies, listen, don't expect your man to be all honest with you and open, and you're not a safe place for his heart. It goes both ways. It's not just about your feelings. He has feelings. And if he says to you, I feel like you don't desire me, don't be like, well, now you expect me to. No, 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 no. No, no, no. No. You would say something like, I could understand how you'd feel that way. What would it look like to you? How could I love you better? Be open to hearing. And then you tell him, this is how I would like to be loved. And when I'm loved this way, it makes me more open to love. And this is how communication starts. Don't get defensive. Okay. Please make time for hugs. That's called intimacy. Sex is a fruit of intimacy, and intimacy is a way of being all the time. I text my husband throughout the day, thinking about you, thinking about your handsome face, or I love you, or I hope you have an amazing day. You are amazing. And he'll text me, hey, you got today. I know you struggled, but you got today. I know the internet's been wonky and you're just having a hard time, but I'm with you and you got this, babe. And I can't wait to come home to you, and I'll take care of dinner. You just do what you need to do. That man, I'm like, oh Lord, get him home soon. So intimacy starts when you wake up. Make time to flirt. My son's like, because my husband comes home and I'm like, running to that door, and he's like, he drops his book bag and we hug each other like a movie. I know it sounds silly, but I don't know. Just when you have that love, you treasure it. And for me, I believe in treasuring and honoring people that I love in my life, all of them. I just do. I believe in a culture of honor. I was raised in a culture of honor, and I believe in the culture of honor, and I believe it in marriage. Intimacy looks like, oh Lord, when he sees us flirting, because sometimes I'll be like, babe, I'll be like, look at them sweatpants. I'll joke around with them. And Christian's like, Lord, and I'll be like, ooh, you look handsome. Oh, I like that sweater on you, babe. And Christian's like, you know, but let me tell you what, when I walk down the stairs, my husband's like, there's the most beautiful woman in the world. He has said that since my son was little. So what does my nearly 13-year-old say? He will wait next to his father and he goes, there's the most beautiful mom in the whole world. He's learning from his father how to be a man. And I love it. That's what you want. Flirt with your wife. Flirt with your husband. Okay. Tell them how kind, handsome, loving, strong, tender. Speak life over your husband. Speak life over your wife. Treasure them. You see, my husband is a gift from God to me, and I get the pleasure and treasure of unwrapping him in all of his seasons. As he ages, as he goes through different things in his life, I get to be there. See, I don't have to, I get to. See, reframe it, ladies. Reframe it. Gentlemen, reframe it. You get to be Superman. You get to go home and be like, there's my wife, the mother of my children. Ooh, look at her. Let me serve. What could I do to serve my woman today? What can I do? If I promise you, listen to me, if both of you come and say, hey, how could we serve each other? If you wake up going, how could I love my husband today? We both wake up thinking that. And that's how we have such a great marriage. Literally, it's servant leadership, both of us. It's that. Listen, just because the Bible says my husband has to sacrifice himself unto death, that doesn't mean that I don't sacrifice for my husband. That doesn't eliminate me from the responsibility of sacrificing for him too. Okay, it doesn't go, but that's why there's mutual submission. It's not one party and there's mutual sacrifice. It doesn't mean that he's always the one. It means that I have to too. Both of us do. You see? Flirt with each other, treasure each other. Diamonds need shining. You need to shine your diamond. Okay, just like you take care of your jewelry because it's valuable. Sometimes people take care of their valuables more than their spouse, and their spouse is the biggest treasure you can ever get. My husband will lift me up with his kind words. He celebrates my strength. He's a safe place for my heart. And he knows that his heart is safe with me. He can cry. He can weep. He could tell me anything. I will go to war for that man. I will do whatever it takes. Back to back, we stand. Back to back we're always guarding each other. I want you to look at your spouse as a gift and a treasure from God above. If you want a Song of Solomon marriage, trust me, because I have it. If you want a Song of Solomon marriage, speak life over your love. Speak life over your love. Your husband and your wife, they're not your enemy. They're a gift from the living God. My gosh. And I want you to live like that. I want you to live free. I want you to live with that level of love because Christ gave that to us. So what we're going to talk about next week is seasons and growth, because this is a big series. The Lord really did want these details. So we talked about the expectations, we continued, but we talked about it regarding sex and intimacy, because that is one of the biggest things in marriages. But what we're going to talk about next week are seasons and growth, because we can't expect that the spouse that we married in our 20s is going to be the same exact person in their 50s. You have to leave room for them to grow. We're going to talk about how to do that in a healthy way. And we're going to talk about that next week. So if you have any questions or any comments or connections, can you just email me at thebridalcallministries@gmail.com. And I would also love for you to email me questions or topics that you would like to see on this show. I would love to know what that is. What is it that you think is not being discussed enough? What is it that you wish would be discussed in this forum right here in Ask the Prophet? So let me know, and I will put your question on the show. Amen. All right. I bless you guys. I will see you next week. And we talked about it just in time. Happy Valentine's Day. Enjoy each other on Friday. Love you guys.
Thank you for joining us today on Dominion TV. You are a part of Team Dominion as we carry the gospel of the kingdom into all the world. As you see behind me, we are building the new Dominion TV studios here at Lot 20. Of course, as we build, there are costs involved and our normal budget that must be taken care of. Also, we are believing for this $1.3 million project to be debt-free by the glory of God. Take a moment today and sow your best faith seed into this media missions ministry. And then remember to set up a recurring partnership seed and sow monthly to support 24/7 faith and kingdom broadcasting into over 170 nations and more. Thank you for your generosity and your support. Together, we are better. And together, we are going to see His kingdom come in all the earth. Thank you for your partnership.
This ministry is able to fulfill the mandate and command of Jesus to carry the gospel of the kingdom into all the world by the faithful support of people just like you. Give online at www.dominion.tv/giving. Here you will find various ways to give, including DTV's PayPal, Zelle, CashApp, and Venmo giving platforms. You can also securely give and partner with us with your credit or debit card and set up your weekly or monthly recurring seed. You can also give by text with your mobile phone. Simply text the word GIVE to 704-817-2843 and follow the prompts for giving securely. If you choose to mail your offering, you can send that to the ministry's mailbox at Dominion TV, 1000 South Commons Drive, Suite 102, Box 305, Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, 29588. On behalf of our founders, Dr. Joseph and Dr. Lynette Dutton, may the Lord bless you richly is our prayer.